Let's go to Jess Bravin at the court. Jess, you've been reading the decision. Tell us what else you found in there.
Well, the Chief Justice rejected the government's main argument, which was that the mandate, the requirement to purchase insurance, was a exercise of the power to regulate interstate commerce, and so that argument, which was really the basis of the congressional action, has fallen, and that does offer a consolation prize to some conservative thinkers and scholars who were mainly interested in reining in congressional authority under the commerce power.
But then, so that takes away the precedential value of the decision, but still he upheld the mandate, right?
That's right, and I can explain why. I mean, again, this was the fallback argument of the government. It is an argument that, interestingly, very few lower courts accepted. A few judges on lower courts did, but no single court accepted the idea that the penalty for those who don't carry insurance was a tax under the federal taxing power. And in fact, the House version of this same bill, which did not pass or could not pass for some procedural reasons, called this penalty a tax. And reading now directly from the opinion of the court, in which there are 5 justices, so it is the opinion, the shared responsibility payment, which is the official name of the penalty, according to the Chief Justice, he writes, the process by which that penalty is collected through the income tax form, it is tied to income and the different income tax rates. People who don't have to pay income taxes don't have to pay this penalty either. He says this process yields the essential feature of any tax. It produces at least some revenue for the government. The payment is expected to raise about $4 billion per year by 2017. And then he turns to some precedents dating back to the 1920s, in which this is the key reason that the, I guess, government wins on this. The court said back in the 20s, and when it looked at certain other federal regulations that imposed similar types of penalties, the constitutional question was not controlled by Congress's choice of a label. So calling it a penalty instead of a tax doesn't matter, according to the
that is
Supreme Court.
fascinating, Jess. That is really fascinating. So basically what the Chief Justice has done is say this isn't about the Commerce Clause. He's agreed with the conservatives that you cannot extend the Commerce Clause to force people to buy insurance, but he has compared it instead to a tax, which, John, really gets to the thing that has always troubled me about this and has been a problem for the conservatives in their argument. There has never been any question about the constitutionality of the ability of the government to say we're going to tax you and then provide you government-provided health care. The individual mandate actually came out of a conservative effort to create an alternative to socialized medicine and say we can have a healthcare plan that is principally based in the private sector, but to do it, you need everybody to buy insurance.
Yeah. And the irony here of Roberts being the justice that's making the call on this, that's writing the opinion, it'll be interesting to hear from Jess what Scalia had to say. Because remember during the oral argument, Scalia was saying, look, if the mandate gets knocked down, that probably guts the entire bill. And that was creating knock-on problems for the Democrats. There were, and possibly in the election, there were lots of parts of that bill that were already very popular with the public, and one of them already enacted.
I have to say that in a highly politicized world, a highly politicized decision, and I know a lot of people won't interpret it this way, but Justice Roberts' decision seems to me to be a victory for common sense. He's saying, by saying this is essentially the equivalent of the tax, and say, folks, you got to realize that the alternative to this kind of a system may be the kind of system that most of the rest of the world uses, which is socialized medicine. And if this is a better alternative, then we ought to allow Congress to pursue this path. I don't know, Jess, if you agree with that, but it seems to me that in a way he's gotten us out of kind of arcane legal arguments and said from a broad philosophical standpoint, this makes sense as a conservative position.
Well, I'll have to I'll have to read this whole very lengthy opinion and the concurrences and dissents more carefully to give you a full summary of that. But I'm still focusing here on the Chief's reasoning about why this thing called a penalty is a tax. And he notes, after discussing how it will in fact raise revenue for the United States Treasury, he goes on to say, none of this is to say that the payment is not intended to affect individual conduct. Although the payment will raise considerable revenue, it plainly is designed to expand health insurance coverage. but taxes that seek to influence conduct are nothing new. And then he goes on to describe some of our earliest federal taxes intended to deter the purchase of imported goods. He talks about the high taxes on cigarettes intended to discourage people from buying them. And then he goes on to explain what's the difference between a penalty and a tax, regardless of the label.
Yeah.
And he says, and he's citing a case from 1996, he says, if the concept of penalty means anything, it means punishment for an unlawful act or omission. And he says, he goes on to write, while the individual mandate clearly aims to induce the purchase of health insurance, it need not be read to declare that failing to do so is unlawful. And the reason is that neither the Act nor any other law attaches any negative legal consequences beyond, for not buying health insurance other than having to make this payment to the IRS.
Yeah.
And he says the government agrees with the reading, confirming that if someone chooses to pay rather than obtain health insurance, they have fully complied with the law. So he's saying that because it's not a criminal act, because the government has not made it a crime or any way infraction, all you have to do is pay this penalty or surcharge or whatever you want to call it. It is, as a descriptive matter, it is a tax despite the label penalty.
It's a cigarette tax, and you get penalized if you don't pay your taxes.
Keep reading, Jess. We'll come back to you in a minute.